at the peak of any action, there is absolute stillness. And that is what a developing meditation is offering, the ability to witness and understand what that means. And from this perspective of the witness, we're able to just simply see the tendency of our own experience. Understanding that there's a natural resting place. It's not a place of force. But it occurs once we truly allow ourselves to clear it all out. So now give yourself that permission, the ability to just allow it all to clear out. And as it is clearing, and as you are aware, we can maintain a very close connection to this quietness which exists just all around the activity that you may see or feel. Keeping the eyes closed, let's bring full deep breaths into the body. Keeping the eyes closed, let's bring our gaze into the space just there in front of us, and we're going to maintain that quality of gaze so it is uninterrupted by any thought. As literal as you can get it. Starting now. Keeping the eyes closed, soften the gaze. And without rushing, slowly allow the eyes to open. And just choose a point on the floor to look at, or somewhere in the room, just so that the eyes can come into a focus. And we want to maintain a connection to the quality of space that we reach, to the depth that we've found within our time sitting. Ideally not necessarily needing to move from that place. So that's a good length of time, not too long. But that's about enough time for us to really see what we are experiencing from our time in the seat. So then what is it that you're experiencing? And the idea is not necessarily to have to share it with everyone, but to be really transparent and honest with yourself as to what you are experiencing inside there. And because we're human beings, chances are really high we had an incredible amount of thoughts going through. Feelings, ideas, suggestions as to how we could do it better. Maybe even wishing that we could do it better. So that's normal, that's natural. We also have a part of us that is enabled and able to connect to these quiet places. The space which over time is truly and very literally uninterrupted by a distraction. And because all of us are sitting here for the same reason, to develop our meditation practice, chances are probably very high that you access that. So you put some effort forward in order to go to that quiet place or meet that space or make it quiet somehow. And because of the nature of being human, chances are high that it was a little bit weak for some of us, this able to concentrate, going, yes, I think I have it, and then all of a sudden it's gone again. And it almost goes to the point of being completely conscious, action, connection, to unconscious connection. So that means we are completely present within our experience of our seat and whatever is happening, even if it is a thought, then all of a sudden we disappear somewhere. And then we remember that we are actually sitting, and then we come back again. So now that piece, which is the concentrated mind just hovering or bouncing on its task, is very, very, very natural and requires a simple amount of attention, not a huge amount, but just a simple amount of attention. This simple attention that I'm speaking of is exactly that. So again, quite literal, the attention that you are giving this focus and concentration is forged and founded within the simplicity of the relationship itself. So void of the baggage, void of the commentary, void of we should, or we should have, or we're going to, or it will be, all of that stuff out. We're considering all of that dialogue and commentary and domination over this aware observer of yours as being complex. So that's the complexity that we are just giving some space to over time just to rest. So we want this simplicity, the simplicity of our experience forward. So that then we're able to become clearly acquainted in a true and honest way with our environment, orientating ourselves to this inner environment in relation to the outer environment. And that's key. And the reason for its ability in relation to the overall meditation is that then it is allowing us as the practitioner of meditation to be okay with what the environment has for us to offer. Be okay with what the environment has to offer us. Just like any environment that we have access to. And chances are really high that a large reason why the meditation is not necessarily maybe feeling as deep as one wants to, or maybe catching the heights of the heights that one would wish there to be, is because we just simply haven't come to terms with the fact that our environment is presenting like this. So therefore we're fighting against this inner environment, saying it's not right, it's not right, it's not right, it's not right, it's not right. Imagine that. I don't know if you can relate to it at all. But it becomes very challenging for the soothing aspects of experience that is void of sleep. So it's not yet sleep, but it's still soothing. It's very challenging for these soothing aspects of who we are to get any traction and grounding when we are in a perpetual analysis of this human experience which is occurring within one's mind. This is further developed as a concentration to accept the fact that the meditation, as we're experiencing in a classical format, is defined as void of action. So any activity that you could see from the experience of the mind, this is then not the pinnacle experience of meditation. Which then, for some ears, might sound like, oh, well, wow, well, how do I do that? But the reality is that it is within the explanation itself, oftentimes within the practice of meditation and yoga, that we actually find the answer. So if the experience of meditation is found void of this thinking patterning, then any time that there's a thinking pattern that comes into the experience of the mind, then we can just simply let it go. But then how does one do that? How does one actually, truly, authentically let go of the commentary, the building of thought, in such a way that is honoring that which I just explained? Your environment simply allowing the space for it to be itself. And that is actually the practice. You getting to know how to experience that level of quiet in such a way that it creates a very clear in-point and out-point, which we've been developing over the course of our lifetime. An in-point is the thought coming in, the out-point is the thought going out. So we want this in-point and out-point to be very, very clear, and the in-point, out-point access becomes larger the more we're able to relax. It contracts and leaves less room as we become more involved and excitable about the state of one's experience within one's own mind. The good news is that all activity which has already been set in motion as an action within one's inner environment can be resolved directly through the practices of meditation. It can. And the reason for that is partially as to what I just explained, but then it goes further and deeper. So then what remains is the confidence around how we're going to understand this quieting tendency of the mind which is already existing, and its relationship with the activity of the mind which is so important. But in order to do that, we must recognize that there's elements within our own experience of our own psyche that is a little bit weak potentially. But as we accept the fact that there is an aspect of our inner ability that is a little bit weak, we have to always also realize that we have the matching ability to strengthen it. But within this course of action that you are developing, we stumble across the question, how? Many, many, many times within this process. And when we access this how, it's not for the sake of us saying, well, I don't know how, therefore I will not do. It's actually for the sake of recognizing that here we insert our ability to, and it's open-ended because each and every one of you is an individual. So your ability to do what exactly within this environment? And it is not taking that thought and attempting to make it become very, very quiet, because that won't necessarily yield you what you desire. And I think that we've probably all experienced that on some level or another. But rather, use the strategy which, again, you've already been given in the form of your physical experience of body, in the form of rhythms of breath, in the form of state and subtleties that you can see with your mind's eye, within the mind. Not just see, but also feel. To begin to teach this focused concentration how to rest within the quiet. So we are employing the physical experience of the body in order to do that. So then we have to become this living example of this quiet space, of this meditative experience, which we innately know. You innately know, or else you would not even be trying it. You know that it's there. You probably have touched upon it many, 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 many times. But now we want to make it more of a consistent experience, so that each time we sit, we find that same place. Each time we open our eyes, we can actually use that experience to our benefit throughout our day. So to access the innate quality which exists from the perspective that you can understand. So from the perspective that you can understand, which has a starting point. And for me, always the starting point is found within the most physical and really the most realized aspect of your human experience, which is your physical body. So if we can agree that we want to be this living example, without you even moving anything to perfect your posture, show me what that looks like. So we don't have to do it any special way, just your way. Show me what this quiet space looks like from the perspective of your body. And I'm curious as to how long you could maintain that. Because that's the thing with the meditative practice, is it's the ability to have prolonged time within a particular state of experience. Not just those little tiny glimpses, but prolonged time spent. That's what we're looking for. So we want to, yes, isolate a period of time of our day for our meditation practice. But as we've talked about before, we also want to elongate that time throughout every other moment of the day if possible. And start to see, well, how long can we maintain it before we get distracted and move on? Accepting the fact that this distraction which occurs and ultimately a moving on is actually a part of your environment. It's a part of who you are at this moment in time. So in order to develop through it to the other side, to access this greater ability, how is it then that you must relate to it? Is it in fact through force, through some sort of inner violence or bad-mouthing dialogue? And that might be the way that works for you. Or is it through a new access point? A potential sweetness which you define for yourself. How do you become sweet to all these parts which you are saying needs attention in order to achieve a meditative state, which will then give you access to achieve a more balanced life, which will then give you access to higher forms of concentration and focus, which will then take you to your goals more quickly? How is it that you are defining that? So if we take this formal meditation time out and we say, well, meditation exists on a 24-hour basis, then how do you digest that information and how would you then replay it? That's what I'm really interested in, is the quality of your voice which is supportive to your meditation, the quality of your gaze, the quality of your listening, the quality of your taste, the quality of what you feel. How are all of these playing a role? Because if we can capture this quiet on as many levels as possible for as long as we possibly can, then we're actually helping out this poor little concentrated focus which works overtime constantly to do good for you. See what I mean? So we want to now bring rise to the optimal environment within the environment that we're living in, so that then at the very core of its fiber, it can then begin to move without any holding. So the only holding which exists within your mental experience is that which you have decided and defined as being important to hold on to. And because we are in conscious relaxation within meditation, we get to see a lot more than when we're in a dynamic, active role within our day. Because we just don't have time to look at that, or that. But when we relax, it just all starts to come through. So taking on that piece, a simple responsibility that if I see it, it's because I've decided that I want to see it. And that's a big stepping up for a lot of individuals to realize that, ooh, I'm doing that. But there is a play, in effect, between that which you are conscious of and that which you are not yet conscious of. So that yet which we are not yet conscious of has this upper hand because its relationship is much deeper and in a lot of sense much more knowing than what we are consciously aware at this moment in time. So in that effect, we have to accept the fact that we actually don't even know everything to know about ourselves yet. And that speaks in terms of the abilities that you have physically, the abilities that you have energetically, the abilities that you hold mentally, and then beyond. So to accept that fact. And that simple developing of a truth might take time to accept even what I'm saying. And to look at it closely is to see, well, is that true? Do I have this unconscious part that maybe has said yes based upon past conversations with oneself that maybe you forgot about? That I must hold this. But if we can come to terms with any truth that may exist within it and say yes, then we're actually qualifying ourselves to become fully responsible for the action of our mind. And as we become fully responsible for the fact that we're creating action, then it becomes more easily to be clearer in the fact that we are the ones that are then responsible for the letting go and the ultimate rest of that mental activity. So in truth, nothing should really ever happen within your own experience that you do not want to. And that is at a very high level. So nothing should ever happen internally that you do not want to happen. Over time, ideally, we're able to get rid of altogether this idea of chance, or I have no control, so therefore I'm just subject to the experiences that are happening to me emotionally, or the feelings that are occurring, and then how I deal with them. Over time, we want to get rid of that, let it go, the misnomers of your own direct experience of who you are. And begin to ideally lighten up. I don't want to sound too heavy or deep or anything, but y'all got to lighten up potentially. Taking it too seriously. And then in that stifling its own growth. Because if we look at nature and its tendencies and how it moves, even the most destructive aspects of nature are seemingly poised within an environment that they have the absolute freedom to do what they need to do at the moment that they need to do it. Maybe you agree or maybe you disagree, but if you look at a tornado, it looks pretty wild and it's going where it needs to go, or a storm or whatever it may be. So it's free to do what it needs to do. A plant is the same way, a flower, free to do what it needs to do in its own environment. The limitations are founded in the same way that we find our limitations, from this inside place out. But what nature and humanity have in common with this need, or this developing ability to express itself freely, human development has an aspect that we are assuming is only for us at the moment. This nature doesn't really have it. And that's this element of free will and choice. So that, in a sense, is what is setting us apart from that which is the rest of nature, is the ability to have this will. So if in fact there is any truth to this, then that is your governing force of ability when it comes to the meditative state and its ability to deepen, is your own will. So what you are choosing to do at that second in time. And we want to experience that choice fully. So if you choose no longer to follow that thought, and the byproduct of that choice is an uncomfortable sensation within the body, let it be there. Let discomfort be there as much as you wish to achieve comfort. And this piece of knowledge is coming from way back when it comes to meditation. Individuals sitting for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours at a time, 13 hours at a time, 14 hours. The number just keeps going into day 1, day 2, day 3, into week 1, week 2, week 3, and it just continues and continues and continues. But when we look at that from the outside, looking at that individual, we say, wow, that individual is really amazing that they can do that. But from the inside, what is occurring is a recognition that this is the state and experience of my body that I'm having now. I am deciding to become very quiet and listen to the most subtle expression of that which I am experiencing. Literally the most subtle expression of that which I am experiencing. And believe it or not, the increased subtlety that we move into is actually the increased dexterity that we have. The increased presence which we are engaging with now with this environment. It's taking a mountain and then all of a sudden it turns into a little tiny dirt hill. That's basically what it is. But the experience is this little dirt hill now all of a sudden becomes an immense mountain that you're sitting on top of and enjoying the view from that altitude. The subtlety and sweetness which exists within the air. And ultimately the quiet that is there. Becomes very profound when we start to see that all which we are experiencing is for our own personal growth and development. All. When an individual is going through a challenge, the individual is experiencing those sensations to keep gently but diligently moving them towards that which is increased ability of equanimity, for that individual so that then they can move beyond it. So all of us feel discomfort. So then what happens within the posture when you're feeling this discomfort? What is the answer if the practice is asking the individual not to move? So we're not supposed to move within the practice of meditation, but yet we feel like something has to move. And it's true, it's not incorrect. There's not some glitch that's saying, oh, there's something wrong that I have to move. Actually, it's correct, you have to move, but how is it that you are then going to move? Recognizing and realizing that the body is really made up of more than just one. So you have, yes, the physical body, but you have the energetic body that follows the same blueprint, and you have the mental body that follows the same blueprint. So now if you had three, one more subtle than the other, as you're experiencing discomfort, and as you know for a fact that you have to move, then how would you do that? And there doesn't need to be an answer right now. This is more presenting opportunities to contemplate within your own meditation time, formally in your seat, but also in every single moment of your day. So what is it that has to happen? Is it a tapping into a deeper breath? Is it a relaxation found within the body? Or is it an aspect of a reframing of that which is being presented to you by your mind as a thought and an emotion? So that thought and emotion in the rest of your dynamic day can then reach into every single individual that you come across that creates discomfort for you. They are yes thought and they are yes emotion. So in the same way that we interact with our meditation practice, observing, we want to ideally get to a place where we can access that same observation in our day-to-day as we look at these beautiful thoughts and feelings and emotions that are around us. Realizing through direct experience that you're choosing to respond or react in that way. That then creates a quality of loud inside or a quality of quiet. And we must keep working in developing these basics until the basics are no longer existing, until they don't exist any longer, and we're able to access this quality of space. If we are not yet able to access this quiet, it's just because you're deciding that it's not yet time to cultivate yourself in such a way that you can say, please mind quiet, and mind says okay. To say, please mind quiet, and the mind says okay, the mind actually has to feel safe. But what safe means is that the mind, its thought, can express itself freely without getting yelled at, without getting chased away, without the individual experiencer throwing up their mental arms in the air and saying, why me? Right? Realistically. And this is talking in relation to an individual, yes, who's starting meditation for the first time, but I'm also talking about individuals who've been meditating for 25 years, and they're still working with this piece, because it's a very predominant aspect within our human experience that we've decided somewhere along the way that we are not fully conscious enough to ask mind to be quiet, or to be done with that feeling, or to no longer react in that way. So there's this definite loop that is being created between this inner practice of meditation and the outer practice of meditation, all innately focused on the exact same goal. It's innate, it's already built in you. You only have one purpose, and that's to realize more and more who you are and why you're here. Would that be two purposes? One greater purpose broken into two. And the more we understand that, not from the perspective of the outside, but rather just simply from the quiet place from the inside, it begins to create huge gains. So this is not necessarily something that we share with anybody, because it oftentimes doesn't make sense. And also it slows down momentum. So if we can keep this relationship almost like a strategy that we hold only for ourselves, test and observe, test and observe, test and observe. And through your observation, begin to determine what is, yes, the proper course of action. Action of what? This ability to quieten down your mind so that then all you hear is the sound of nothing. All you feel is that of nothing. All you see is that of nothing. And from this profound experience of nothing, you will see for yourself, and you may have already, all things exist. All things manifest from this space of nothing. And you prove it to yourself every day. Because you have no thought, and all of a sudden there's a thought. And then that thought is gone again. And you're like, what was I thinking about? And poof, the thought comes back. So from nothing, something exists. From nothing, something exists. But this is on a mind-boggling scale. So from nothing, universally, something happened. So at one point there was nothing in Edmonton, and now look, poof, so many things in Edmonton. But it keeps going like that as an example again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Then eventually there's nothing again. So this building will eventually disappear. But now this building is your thought. Less permanent. Your thought is much less permanent, much more quick to dissolve, usually. So we define what it is that we wish to achieve. What is it? Why are you here? Not as an absolute, exact pinpoint, but rather and more favorably to the point that you can understand is actually your absolute truth right now. So if I ask you show me your soul, just humor me for a moment and show it to me. And that's it. This is your full depth of understanding, if you're showing me correctly, of your soul. No more, no less. With a continuous potential for there to be more revealed to you as to what is your soul. What does it mean? How do you access it? How does it work? Is there a button? Is there a zipper? All these questions actually have answers to them on the inside, based upon your own creativity, your own knowledge, past, which you are then pushing forward to bring insights for the future. And in order to access this which I'm speaking of, you must ideally be open-ended with your experience, or with your analysis, or with your development. It must have the room to do what it needs to do, just like everything else in nature. So if we say, okay, good, I found my soul, I'm going to keep it here, then chances are this is where we stop. But if we say that can't be it, there must be more, but I'm going to accept that I know everything about my soul to know about my soul now. And that it's going to be directed in my favor to everything which I am doing, not excluding any one thing that I experience within my life, because it is all me that is experiencing, yes? So how is it, this is now my mind, how is it that I categorize this experience as being important and this experience as being not important. For the developing meditation, we actually want to see all of it as being so profound in its own importance, the smallest ones. So the footstep that you take, your favorite shoes, a bottle of water, walking down the hall. So the mundane of the most mundane, as important as getting that job promotion or finding that girl or finding that boy or finishing off your house, whatever it is that you find is important. So the two are working as one. One is more complex than the other, and this is ideally the point that we're really going to allow to just settle. So one is more complex than the other. One has more charge and one has more emotion, one has more thought than the other. But they're both at same importance. So one is then giving you an experience of how to manage thought on its action, on its active mode, and the other is teaching you how to simplify but maintain the same reverence and importance for the experience that you're having without any of that mental activity. So void mental activity, what happens? Autopilot, I'm bored. Autopilot, this is not fun. Autopilot, I need to do something. Autopilot, why am I staring at my toes right now? Autopilot, I wish that something exciting will happen to me now. And this is the tendency which happens within meditation. I sit, I close my eyes, I become relaxed. Well, what do I do now? I'm relaxed. And then that immediately pulls you out and creates the boing, 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 boing of your focus and concentration. So now we can see how we're painting this incredible picture as to how we are innately intertwined with all activities that we incur within our day as a single point of concentrated focus. And that focus is you, your growth, your development, and ultimately your understanding of who you are and why you are here. All of this that we just talked about, I don't ever need to say it again. All you have to do is just simply close your eyes, find quiet place, and do not accept anything but the experience of nothing. All answers will be given there. Most definitely. Thank you very much, everyone. Namaste. Enjoy your meditation. There's no rush. We can stay here for a while.
If you ever have any questions for Rameen, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to be able to curate a broadcast that is more in alignment with your genuine inquiries about anything and everything and meditation. You can email me, Haji, and I will ask your questions on your behalf anonymously. You can reach me at info@sattvaonline.com. That's info@sattvaonline.com. And I'll make sure to let you know as soon as your questions were answered on air. Thank you.